So, good morning, church. I miss the days when I was a teacher and people would say, good morning, miss. But it's all right, you don't have to do that. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Jesus and the woman at the well. Is that okay? Cool. I love when worship does half of the preach for you. So I feel like we're in a good place. We're starting from a really good place. Thank you so much, you guys. It was really, really beautiful. And I would like to invite you to just imagine, today's a warm-ish day, so it's not too hard to imagine. Imagine that you're on a hotter day than today, and you're by a well, and Jesus is there, and he's inviting you to sit with him. Can you imagine that? Picture whatever a well looks like in your head, and just imagine sitting there with Jesus, okay? And this is kind of the place where we're going to start from and just receive from that conversation with Jesus. Turns out we're witnessing a conversation, but let's just imagine that we're there. Just a little fun fact. This is, I think, the third time that I am preaching from John 4, which obviously never happens to me because I don't preach that often, first of all, but I like variety. But as I was kind of preparing for today, I've been preparing for a few weeks and I could not move from it. I just keep coming back to this text. And another fun fact is that this week, particularly, my ability to love has been challenged in various ways. And so I guess at this stage, I'm just preaching to myself, and I'm taking you along for the ride, if it's okay with you. So just watch as I preach to myself, and hopefully there will be something that will be gleaned from you as well. Because the more I read about this text, the more I read it, the more I spend time with God in that story, the more I hear his unconditional love. And the title of my preach today is Love Looks Like Something. So if we read verses 4 to 9, that should appear by magic behind me. It says, now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar. Hope that's the right way to pronounce it. Near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. I love how John here puts into brackets a few pieces of information for us that we will come to later. So let's look at Jesus. Jesus is on his way back from Judea to Galilee when we come into that story. And at the time, if Jews had to undertake that journey, they would make a big detour to try and avoid Samaria. The reason was they considered Samaritans and the land to be defiled. Historically, Samaritans were Jews from the north part of Israel, but they had not been sent into exile and had intermarried with Gentiles, and so the Jews who then came back from exile considered them and their land impure. But for Jesus, impurity has nothing to do from the outside. It's something that is from the inside. It's a state of the heart. So he's not really afraid to go via Samaria. Besides, he has a mission. His mission is to reconcile all nations to God. And so he starts next door. Samaria is part of his mandate, and that's where he starts. Now, we know that Jesus is fully God. but he's also fully human. And as a human, for him, this is a hot day. And he's been walking, probably under the sun. He's probably tired. And he says that he needs a drink. There is a well. He has sent his disciples away to get food. And there comes a woman. Now, have you ever been to Israel or the Middle East? Or just the south of Europe? I would say the south of France because that's where I go the most often, but it's valid for, other countries in the southern Europe. The only people you will see outside in the hottest hours of the day are not locals. All right? They're not the locals. Nobody would ever get water in the middle of the day. That is a crazy thing to do. And in that culture, women would usually go to get water in groups because it's safer, and they would go at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, never in the middle of the day. But this woman is alone in the hottest part of the day, coming to the well to get water. What it tells me is that either she doesn't want to be seen or nobody wants to be seen with her. Either way, she's probably a social outcast and she's really hoping that she's going to be on her own, grab her water, and then go home. But Jesus is there and he's just waiting for her. And in that moment, Jesus breaks a lot of social barriers in just the one conversation. I'm just naming a few. First of all, men would avoid speaking to a woman who is on her own in a public space at that time. That wasn't culturally appropriate. There is about 500 years of hostility between Jews and Samaritans. And not only Jesus speaks to a Samaritan, he speaks to a Samaritan woman, which, in the hierarchy of people was not too high at the time. And not only that, he asks her for a favor. He asks for water. And since he has no bucket, he will have to use hers. And again, he's breaking a social barrier here that John very kindly puts into bracket for us just to remind us that Jews would never associate with Samaritans. That means they would not even use the same utensils as the Samaritans if they were invited to the same dinner. The woman is so shocked that in her question, she reminds Jesus of the rules. She's like, hey, I don't know if you read the book, but this is not how it rolls. Like, normally, this is not how we do this. So she's asking him, how come you, a man, a Jewish man, is asking something from me, a woman, a Samaritan woman? I absolutely love this interaction. Because in that little bit, Jesus is establishing a crucial point of his ministry. He's saying that no one is outside of God's reach. No matter what you think of yourself, no matter where you think you are on the hierarchy of humanity, which, by the way, is a scam. There is no hierarchy of humanity. But no matter who you think you are, God has a plan for you, and he will make the time. Your circumstances, your social origin, wherever you are, that doesn't stop Jesus from finding you. And he will find you because he loves you. He will do anything he can to pursue you, to find and rescue you. Even, in that case, sending the disciples away so they're not in the way. So her incredulity is genuine. She wonders what's going on. But what I love about that woman is that she's being very brave in that moment. Because it is also defying a lot of rules for her. And she doesn't know how that conversation is going to end. But she goes against everything she would expect or know and engages in a conversation with Jesus. Sometimes, engaging in a relationship with Jesus requires us to go over ourselves and over what we believe about ourselves and just go for it. And as she does that, that one woman gets revelation that we still benefit from 2,000 years later. That is the kind of courage that I would like to be able to present to the world. I'm not there yet, but, step by step. If we look real quick at verses 10 to 14, it says, Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." I'm just going to stop at verse 10. You can read the rest behind me. So the woman said, "You have nothing to draw with and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself?" I think I'm reading the whole thing. Sorry about that. That was not the plan. Here, Jesus introduces himself as gift of God and the one who gives water that never runs out, just like we sang today. He is the fountain of living water. And when he presents himself like that, he links himself back to a prophetic word that Jeremiah had given in Jeremiah 17, verse 13, where God is described as the hope of Israel and the spring of living water. So again, in that small conversation, he is pointing back to the law and to a text that people would know at the time, and introducing himself very gradually as Son of God, Savior, and Messiah. Basically, he's saying, I'm the one you've been waiting for all this time. Now let's look at verses 15 to 19. It's the whole bit about intimacy. The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." He told her, "Go, call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. And Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, "I can see that you're a prophet." This part of the story has been weaponized a lot and resulted in a lot of judgment and hurt. But notice how the author, John here, doesn't give us any reason why this woman doesn't have a husband or why she's had 5 husbands. The first thought could be, sure, yes, she could be a prostitute, but there could be a number of other reasons why she's had 5 husbands. She could have been 5 times widowed. This was possible. She could have been 5 times divorced or repudiated for various reasons, or a combination of all of the above. We don't know, and I suspect that it really doesn't matter, because if it did, we would have the information. And so that tells me that what is important about that part of the story is something else. I'm not married yet, but I have had a few unsuccessful relationships, let's call it like that. And I have seen a lot of my friends, married or not, going through some unsuccessful relationships. The common point that I see in all that is that every time there's a heartbreak, there's a scar. So what I know for sure is that this woman who has been through 5 different relationships and is now in a 6th one, she's had some heartbreaks and she's had some scars. And from the fact that she's coming to the well alone in the middle of the day, I know that she feels the need to hide the scars or to protect herself. But on that day, she's meeting Jesus. And the beauty about Jesus is that there's nothing you need to hide from him. There's nothing you can hide from him, but there's nothing you need to hide from him. The invitation is, come to the well, come to the living water with your scars. You don't need to disguise them, you don't need to hide them, because he loves you no matter what. If we look specifically at verses 16 and 18, I really like those because I teach people about the prophetic, and I find that they're such a great model for prophetic ministry, or any ministry where you have to interact with people for that matter. So kind of all of them. It says, he told her, go call your husband and come back. I have no husband, she replied. And Jesus said to her, you are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have said is quite true. The whole point of any form of ministry, but I would talk about the one that I'm passionate about, which is the prophetic, is to reveal the heart of God for his children. Our job is to bring people closer to God, not further. Anything that we do, we want to bring them closer to God and into a deeper relationship with the Father. The goal is never to expose people's sin just for the sake of exposure. That's not how it works. That's not how God wants it. And here, Jesus asks her to go get her husband, knowing fully well that she hasn't got one, but like a few more. But in doing that, in asking her that question, it actually gives her the opportunity to open up. This is just an invitation to say, hey, let's have a chat. I'm here for you. Her truth, I hear absolutely no condemnation in what I read here from Jesus. It's just facts. But actually, her truth doesn't seem to faze Jesus. So actually, people's scars, people's truth shouldn't faze us either, should it? And as she shares something that is deeply personal, he's able to bring truth, his truth, the truth that actually matters. He brings light into her life. And to me, this whole part of a conversation seems a lot like an invitation to step into healing and true intimacy with the Father. It's just like, come to the Father with your scars. He can see them, but not only that, he can heal them. And through that, he can bring you into a true relationship with him, an intimate relationship with him, where you can feel the fullness of his love. Because scars create barriers between you and God. But he just wants to remove them. He doesn't ignore them, he heals them. And as he does that, within that conversation, he introduces another capital bit of truth that is about worship. Because worship is based on full intimacy with the Father. So another aspect of love that we're going to look at now is worship. Let's read verses 20 to 24. It says, our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. Woman, Jesus replied, believe me, A time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet, a time is coming and has now come when the true worshippers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshippers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshippers must worship in the Spirit and in truth. I just love this whole passage. There's gold nuggets everywhere. And I love here how it looks like she's changing the subject, maybe because the conversation is starting to be slightly uncomfortable. But actually, Jesus uses this change of subject as a bridge to talk about worship. Remember, Jesus has a plan. And so he just takes this opportunity to reveal a few important truths about what worship truly is. Worship is not about the noise that we make, be it song or not song. It's not about the instruments we use. It's not about how good we are at it or how bad we are at it. It has nothing to do with the place we're in, whether we're in a church, in a temple, or somewhere else. But it's all about our spirit aligning with the Spirit of God. That is the whole point. And when we do that, his truth penetrates in us and reveals the Father to us. Worship is about aligning our hearts with his heart. I also love, just in passing, just a tiny detail, that she probably has been worshipping the Messiah, or hoping at least for the Messiah, and when she meets him, she doesn't recognize him straight away. I suspect it happens to us often. More often than we know, yes. Let's read now verses 25 and 26. This is the effect of radical love. The woman said, I know that Messiah called Christ is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. I know that they didn't have a mic at that time, but I feel like this would be a mic drop moment. This is the first time in his ministry that Jesus acknowledges that he is the Messiah. Earlier, the disciples of John called him Messiah, but he hasn't confirmed. He hasn't confirmed yet. So at this point in time, he reveals this powerful, historical, foundational truth, not to some random person, but to a woman, a Samaritan woman, and someone who is probably an outcast in her community. And in doing so, just in that moment, he shows the power of radical love. He just shows how he loves and honors all, how there's a space for all of us in God's family, how his job, his entire mission is to reconcile all humanity into true intimacy with the Father and bring us all into worshiping in spirit and in truth. I don't know how I would have fared in that situation. People who know me know that I'm not necessarily the most adventurous when it comes to meeting people. I'm a high introvert. I find my own company quite enjoyable. And so, meeting other people is always kind of a challenge. And I generally find people very weird. It's okay. I'm being honest about it, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm just saying it out loud. But Jesus is not like us. He doesn't look at the external appearance. He's not being fazed by how weird people are. He's not being fazed by where people are at in their situations, in their lives, how they dress, how they speak, how they react to things. He has a mission and he has a goal. It's to reconcile all with people, with God, sorry. He doesn't care much about what people think about him as well. If we look at the stories of Jesus, he hung out with all kinds of weird people. And that day, he deliberately went to Samaria, sat at a well in the hottest part of the day, just sat there, waited for the woman to come for water and started chatting to her. And what a conversation. How powerful when Jesus just stops for the one. How powerful it is. I love how, in that moment, he sent the disciples away to get food. Because I suspect that he didn't want their prejudices to mess up his plan. There are times when God, in his infinite grace, will need to move us out of the way just to give us time to understand what he's doing. And it's okay. Sometimes we need the time. The disciples did get it. When we see how they act in Acts, when they go all around and share the gospel with people, they finally got what the plan was. But at that time, I suspect that it was probably a bit too early. I love how Jesus never ostracizes or humiliates the woman. He never shames her, but he speaks straight to her heart. So much so that the effect of that conversation, where she felt loved in such a way, the effect is that she forgets that she even needs water. She goes back to the village and starts sharing the good news. This is still the middle of the day, so people are in their houses. They're not outside like we would be because we're tourists. No, they're in their houses or they're in the shade doing other things. And she runs back and she's sharing her story. And after just that one conversation with Jesus, her transformation must have been so radical that people who looked at her were like, okay, we need that Jesus. I loved when Jo shared her story and her colleagues were, oh, you look different, because she had an encounter. Wouldn't it be wonderful if people could see Jesus in us all the time? I believe that God is inviting us in the same way today. The invitation is simple. Come to him. Come with your broken heart. Come with your scars. Come with your messy story. Come with your pains. Come with your joys. It's all good. And let's sit with Jesus. Let's have a chat. Let's be honest. Let's have a drink from the living water. And let him transform us from the inside out. This is not just a one-off moment. This is a moment that we need to come back to regularly. We want to live our lives in a way where we let him see us, the real us, and just watch how he will use us. How he will use you, the whole of you, the real you, not the you that you present to the world. The real you, scars, joy, and all. Because he wants to use you for his glory. He is bringing freedom to all. All. And in that, he gives us the power to stand in the fullness of who God has made us to be. The woman has been so radically transformed that just on the base of what they see and they hear, her people just come to Jesus and ask him to stay for 2 days. Jesus came, sat at a well, needed water, probably needed food, and out of that conversation that he had with just the one person, an entire community asked him to stay for 2 days. And we know how the story continues because later in Acts 8, we see that Philip is reaping the harvest that was planted at that time. We know that it's time for the harvest, right? Yes. Like the big harvest. We've seen the signs, we have heard the calls, a lot of prophets have mentioned it, the Bible has called us to it, it's always time for the harvest. But we owe the world an encounter with the loving God, don't we? We are called to show Jesus' love to the whole world around us. The Bible tells us that the earth is groaning for the sons of God to be revealed. My question is, what does that look like? We carry God's light and his love in everything that we do. So what does that look like? I'm sorry, I don't have the answer. Because I believe that it's up to us to figure it out with God and with one another. We need to figure it out in alignment with the Father and with his plan for us and for our lives. But what I know for sure, I don't have the answer to all the questions, but what I know for sure is that the harvest is getting ripe and we need to get ready. So, are you ready? I like that. It's a polite yes. That is, yes, very true, very true. Let's start there. The question I feel is, are you ready to love in a radical and uncompromised way? To love like the Father loves? Will you open your heart and your hand in love? The people are coming. And they're coming to you. Open your eyes and prepare your heart. Prodigals are coming back. Are we ready to welcome them back with our hearts and our arms wide open? To welcome them back with their scars and their joys and their messy stories? If we look at the season we're in, it seems forever chaotic. You never know if you're going to wake up to the news of a new war or a new pandemic or a new random catastrophe. But God hasn't changed, has he? He is still sovereign. He still saves. And his love looks like salvation, like deliverance, like healing and overflowing goodness. His glory is coming. And it sounds like babies prophesying, like children preaching, like teenagers leading the way, and families moving together in unison with the heartbeat of the Father. It looks like God's family moving together. In the season we're in, we don't want to get distracted by the activity of the enemy or the messages of doom. That is not the point. Don't get distracted by the signs that seem to confirm everything you believe or you expect about God. Keep your eyes and your heart open to the unexpected. Keep your eyes open to the signs of God's love, to the suddenlies, to the disconcerting moments that will get you closer to his heart. Be open to the inconvenient conversations that will give the opportunity to share the love of God with another person. In this season, we want to be humble and vulnerable and to focus on what God is doing on the earth so that we can partner with him. I heard God say, I know that there is quite a lot going on right now. Believe me, I know. But all along, look for my presence. I'm not in the thunder. I'm not in the wind. Listen to my love, speaking truth directly to your heart, and let it resonate in you and flow out of you. So in a season of constant shaking, I would like to invite us all to know who God says we are and who he has called us specifically to be. Keep your heart close to his heart and your spirit close to his so that you can stand your ground. No matter what is happening, we want to stand our ground because we're standing on the solid rock. And not only that, so that we can play our part in the harvest. Can I ask the band to come back, please? As the band comes back, I would like to give an opportunity for a response. First of all, if you don't know the Jesus that I'm talking about, the one who loves you, the one who pursues you, the one that just wants to reconcile you to the heart of the Father, if you want to know that love, please come to me at the end. I would like to pray for you. If you want your life to be transformed like that of the Samaritan woman, don't delay. Today is the day. Let the light of God see you and transform you. And come to the front and we'll pray for you at the end. Now, if you know Jesus, Jesus has been your friend for however long, and you love God, but you just want to step into greater depths of his love. You would like to feel his love for you in greater measure so that you can carry his love to the world around you. I would just invite you to stand up. You don't have to come to the front. Just stand up where you are. And you know what? I even respect the fact that you don't want to stand if you don't want to. I'm not that precious. And God will find you anyway. But I would like to invite you to stand in response if you'd like. And as you stand, just let the love of God wash over you. Hear his loving voice calling you, telling you how much he loves you, how much he knows you, the whole of you, and he still loves you. As we join in with the worship, the invitation is there to align your heart and your spirit with his as you worship. Share your love for him, but let his love for you transform you from the inside out. Because the world needs to see the light and the love of God in you.